put this here. Okay. Where are we at? You ready? You let me know. Ready to roll? All ready? Okay. Why don't you start both cameras, please? They're both. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Rick Fuad. I am the president of. Oh, okay. Thank you. Start over again. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Microphone's not on.
I think you got it, Rick.
Okay. I'm pretty loud. I usually don't need a microphone. Now I'm really going to be loud. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Rick Fuad. I am the president of Protect The Hersheys Children, Inc. We are a reform advocacy group comprised of alumni and former students of what was once the Hershey Industrial School, now known as the Milton Hershey School, founded in 1909 as an orphanage by Milton S. Hershey, the philanthropist and candy magnate, and his wife, Catherine. Thank you all for joining us here today as we honor Ken Brady, an esteemed alumnus of the school, who is probably shocked that we showed up here.
Yes, I am.
Unexpectedly. So here we are. And thank you to Mother Superior, Karen, and all of the staff for kindly accommodating us today. We're sorry to disrupt your programs, and we really appreciate the warm welcome and everybody's participation. And a warm hello to Ken's son and daughter. Nice to see you as well. So welcome, everyone. And as many of you know, Ken is steeped in the learning of the charitable mission of Milton S. Hershey and devoted to preserving and enhancing that mission. Fortunately for all of you, I have to keep my remarks short. Otherwise, heaven knows I could carry on probably most of the day about how much Ken means to us, and especially about how Ken's own life traces the arc of the Hershey charity from the school's foundation in 1909, a mere 12 years before Ken was born in 1921, right up to the present day. Ken was thus at the school when Mr. Hershey was still alive, when Mr. Hershey monitored the school's operations, made sure the students were all well cared for and properly fed, assured that the school's charitable mission was properly pursued, and that all of its resources were used for serving children who required residential care, the founding purpose of the charity. In fact, Ken actually met Mr. Hershey on more than one occasion. So Ken, basically, his knowledge of the institution, of where we were all raised, is informed by first-hand knowledge of the founder himself, and Ken has watched for decades as the charity changed over time. Many of these changes, of course, were very positive. The school's programs evolved and were adapted to reflect competent child welfare progress. And naturally, we laud these changes and we wholeheartedly endorse them. This is also why the school has been such a force for good in the world, rescued so many children from the conditions of poverty and neglect that the Hershey sought to remedy, such as Ken himself and, of course, myself and the other members of our organization. We are all deeply grateful to the Hersheys and to the school for what it's provided for decades. If that were the end of the story, I really wouldn't be here today, because the truth is there's no avoiding that after Mr. Hershey died in 1948, when Ken was just 27 years old, the charity's mission basically began to go off the rails. And what happened is that assets began to be diverted incrementally and then dramatically over time. And so if we fast forward to 1963, and $50 million of the Hershey's funds and 543 acres of orphanage land were diverted unlawfully to build Penn State, a medical school. And this happened with the collaboration of the local public officials, and we all believe that this was, may have done a lot of good for the local community and helped a lot of people, but legions of desperately needy children were consigned to foster care and to inferior orphanages as a result. Ken was 42 years old at the time, and Ken was one of the handful of alumni who protested and resisted this dramatic initial change. And the theme that I would simply point out here without belaboring it is that we had alumni like Ken Brady who were trying to preserve the core mission of the charity, which was residential care for orphan children. And then we had a group of public officials and the trustees who wanted to use the charity's resources for other purposes. As always in the Hershey saga, Ken and the resistors of that era were overwhelmed by the alliance of the powerful Hershey trustees and the local authorities, who basically had their way in the orphans court. And in those proceedings, the children were never represented. They were always unrepresented. And that's where the name of our group comes in. We are Protect the Hersheys Children, Inc., and our mission has been to speak for those kids who've never been represented in those orphans court proceedings and who, in our view, have really never been properly considered in the decision-making process since the death of Mr. Hershey himself. Over the decades, Ken remained keenly aware of what was happening at Hershey, including the closing of the school's laudable farm program, the gutting of its vaunted vocational education program, taking children out of the magnificent and bucolic community-wide homes that the Hersheys bequeathed them, and telescoping them into a centralized compound to free land for developers and others, and otherwise repeatedly and consistently diverting assets to non-child uses. This was always with the active collaboration of public officials who were required by law to prevent this. Over these decades, Ken remained among the alumni who continued to press for proper management of the school, proper governance of the charity's board, credible child welfare learning on the board and in the school's leadership, and other elementary and completely non-controversial reforms. But of course, here again, the alliance of the powerful Hershey trustees and corrupt Pennsylvania public officials, including the state attorney general, has consistently proven too much for the alumni reform advocates, a group that was at one time nicknamed the ragtag army of orphans, which tells you how much fear we struck in people's hearts. And that's still us. We are still that small group, and we are still completely overmatched, which has meant the continued misuse of Hershey assets, vastly underserving children who need residential care, 400,000 foster care children in America, 13,000 in Pennsylvania alone, all of whom could be cared for by the Hershey charity, certainly the ones in Pennsylvania, if the assets were properly used for them. But of course, the politicians are very happy about it, and the people who are connected to the board have made vast fortunes for themselves. As recently as 2020, $350 million was diverted to purposes other than the residential care of these children. And once again, that proceeding in the orphans court occurred without a single person there speaking on behalf of the children. Our group tried to intervene in that matter, but we were again overmatched, and we never even got a syllable in edgewise in a court of law, so that money just walked out the door. So this has all meant that Hershey assets can continue to be misused. Nonetheless, and now we get to the good part, for all of these decades, Ken has stayed true to the Hershey's mission, braved the slings and arrows directed at him and other Hershey reform advocates by the charity's allies, and to this very day has spoken truth to power as concerns the operations and governance of the school, and serving on PHC's Protect the Hersheys Children board since its founding nearly 2 decades ago. Year in and year out, Ken has always shown up, has always done the work that's needed to keep the reform flame alive. Ken is just tireless. He's never slowed down. I can barely keep up with him. And over time, watching Ken, it calls to mind Tennyson's marvelous words. Though much is taken, much abides, and though we are not now that strength which in old days moved earth and heaven, that which we are, one equal temper of heroic hearts, made weak by time and fate, but strong in will, to strive, to seek, to find, and not to yield. Ken Brady has never yielded in his devotion to the Hershey's charitable mission, and neither have we. And all of this is why we are here today, to bestow upon Ken the highest honor that our humble organization can bestow, the John P. Rice Courage Award. And for this point, please let me just read what the plaque that we're about to give Ken says. In recognition of over 8 decades of commitment to the child-saving mission of Milton and Catherine Hershey, during which he demonstrated courage, selflessness, and unflagging devotion, despite great adversity, with no thought of material reward or self-gain, and based in part on having met in person Milton S. Hershey himself, and therefore knowing as well as anyone, past or present, what the philanthropist and candy manufacturer desired for the children he sought to save, Protect the Hersheys Children, Inc. hereby bestows upon Kenneth O. Brady the John P. Rice Courage Award, named for the late John P. Rice, whose own commitment to the Hershey's mission also exemplified these qualities. Ken, we are proud to call you brother and fellow reform activist. We are humbled by the dedication you have shown for so many years to the Hershey's child-saving mission. We pledge to persevere in this battle and in speaking truth to power. Thank you, and God bless you.
Thank you. This was a surprise. I found out about it 5 minutes ago, to be truthful with you. All I knew was I was to be ready for an event that was going to be held in this building, in this room, at 2 o'clock. And that's as far as I knew something was going to be happening. And in our monthly activity calendar, there was nothing to indicate a meeting of this type. So it was a complete surprise, and it's a very big surprise to have this gentleman here today. He came down the whole way today from New York City just to be here. Thank you, Rick.
Wouldn't miss it for the world.
Thank you. Thank you, Rick.
Thank you, Ken.
You are devoted, I'm sure. If I may, as Rick mentioned, I was living when Mr. Hershey was living. I had a number of contacts with Hershey. Well, one point I want to make out is, whenever you eat a piece of Hershey candy, please remember what good charity Rick pointed out that Mr. Hershey did with his fortune. Mr. Hershey married in 1905, and his wife came down from New York State to live in Hershey. Shortly after they were married, she was diagnosed with a terminal illness. And as the illness progressed, Mr. Hershey tried to find means to have her cured of her terminal illness. And then Mrs. Hershey when she realized that she had the terminal, she suggested that the Mr. Hershey take his fortune after she passes to take care of children in dire need of a home. And I was one of those later children that he took in. Anyway, after Mrs. Hershey died from her illness, before she died, Mr. Hershey, I'll tell you a little story on the Titanic. After Mrs. Hershey realized her illness, Mr. Hershey in December of 1911 decided to take a trip to Europe for two purposes. One, to find medical people who could help Mrs. Hershey with her terminal illness. And the other purpose was to find a means of on a better milk chocolate. Once he got in, he took an ocean liner. Of course, there were no airplanes in those days. He had to take an ocean liner to Europe. After he and his wife were in Europe a few days, he got an urgent telegram that told him there was an urgent, needy problem in his chocolate factory. So he left his wife in New York, realized he would return, and he got another ship back to New York and went to Hershey. It took a number of days to fix the problem, but when he did, he then went back to Europe. His original return trip back from Europe to New York was on the Titanic. And we all know what happened to the Titanic on its maiden voyage when it hit the iceberg. So here's a situation where there was a major problem that turned out to be a blessing for Mr. Hershey. If that problem had not come up, he and his wife would have been on the Titanic and when it sunk. When the ship hit the iceberg, the crew realized there were not enough lifeboats on the Titanic for all of the passengers. So the crew allowed only ladies and children to get into the lifeboats. All of the men eventually went down with the ship. So if Mr. Hershey had been on the Titanic, he would not have been able to return to Hershey. If he had not returned, I would not be sitting here today. I want to thank Mr. Hershey now for what he did for me. He took me, my father passed away from cancer in 1929. In 1929, when he passed away, my mother realized there was no way she could keep me or her other children. And somehow, I wish I had asked my mother, but I never failed, how she found Mr. Hershey. Anyway, she contacted Mr. Hershey and told him the sad story that she could not keep us children. He immediately took my two brothers and me into his children's home in Hershey. So that's how I lost my father. My mother, having no money, could not come up to visit. In my 11 years in Hershey, I saw my mother 4 times because she had no money to make a train trip to Harrisburg. Harrisburg, she could get the streetcar then to come to Hershey. But so that's why I say I lost both my mother and my father. But it was Mr. Hershey who saved me. I had a number of meetings with Mr. Hershey while I was up there. And when he bought land for his chocolate factory, he bought up a number of farms around Hershey. And when we got to age 12, what he would do, he would put us on one of those farms at age 12. And he would put 20 boys on each farm and 30 cows on each farm. So that 10 boys would be doing housework, learning how to take care of the house and so forth, and 10 boys then would milk the cows. Every 2 weeks, the two groups switched. The milkers became houseworkers, houseworkers became milkers. Mr. Hershey had us milking cows for a reason. You can tell how he was really thinking ahead for our benefit. So what he did was, he, with 30 cows and 10 boys, we became responsible, each boy became responsible for 3 cows. We had to learn how to feed the cows. We had to learn how to wash them thoroughly, as you'll hear in a minute, and we had to learn to milk them by hand. So now that we had that in Mr. Hershey scheduled 2 milkings a day, 1 in the morning and 1 in the afternoon. Now, so we had to learn about the milking times. If we were off somewhere, he really taught us 2 lessons. We had to learn to be back on time for the milking, wherever we were. And we had to learn to wash the cows thoroughly before milking, because once a month, incidentally, our milk every day went to the Hershey Dairy. Once a month, our milk would be tested for cleanliness. And if the test passed, each home then that passed got a 5-gallon jug of ice cream. So if it failed, the test failed, you know then that one boy probably did not wash his cows thoroughly. So that taught us a lesson. See, Mr. Hershey had in mind, he taught us to be reliable and responsible. To be reliable, we had to be back at the milking times. To be responsible, we had to wash those cows thoroughly so that it would pass the cleanliness test. So that's the 2 attributes and the reason Mr. Hershey had us milking cows. Now, when I got to age 18 and was ready for high school, the graduation, Mr. Hershey handed me my high school diploma. Now I was ready to leave school. In 1939 in Europe, what became World War II later, the war in Europe started, but the United States was not involved. But the United States, thinking they could get involved later, they decided to start the military draft. Well, I was in 39. In 1940, when I graduated from high school, I had to make a decision. I knew that if I was drafted soon, which is a possibility because of just getting out of high school and being young, the military would draft me quickly. So I decided, rather than go to start college and have college interrupted by being drafted, I decided to get a job and just wait to be drafted. I got a job at the Glen L. Martin Company that was making military airplanes. So when eventually, when Pearl Harbor came and the United States got involved in World War II, the military draft really went up fast, and more men were being drafted. But the fact that I was working at the Glen L. Martin Company on military airplanes, I started to get deferments. So I got deferments, and eventually in World War II, Germany overran all of Europe down to the beaches of France. So the only thing keeping England safe was the English Channel. So the United States, eventually being involved in the war, decided they would have a D-Day. D-Day would be the day that the military would cross the English Channel and take the beaches of France back as a spearhead to go and defeat Germany. Well, the military then decided they would need a lot of military gliders to get hundreds and hundreds of thousands of troops across the English Channel. So eventually, when D-Day was really planned, I lost my work deferment and I was drafted. But when I was drafted, the draft notice said to go to the railroad station. There will be a military train arriving to get on the train. So I got on the train. When it arrived, I found a seat, and I thought for sure it'd be I had no idea where we were going, how long the trip would take, or anything. I got a seat and sat down, and the train started, and we went a long distance of 12 miles. We stopped at Fort Meade, Florida, where we were all ordered off the train. When we were ordered off the train, we were told to go into a large room where there were a number of doctors. We all got a physical, and if you failed the physical, they sent you back home. If you passed the physical, they sent you into the next room. President Roosevelt at the time had stopped volunteering for military duty. And the reason he did that was that when you volunteered, you could pick your branch of service you wanted. When you were drafted, you were told what branch of service you would serve in. So the fact that the Army needed hundreds of thousands more men for the invasion of Europe, most men then were just drafted. So anyway, we were told to be in that room, and most men were being told they would be in the Army as foot soldiers. Well, I surely did not want to be a foot soldier. So when they got to me, they told me I would be in the Army Air Corps. Oh, what a good surprise that was. And the reason was my job at the Glenn Martin Company working on airplanes. I guess they connected that to the Army Air Corps. So that saved me from being a foot soldier on the invasion of Europe. Incidentally, before I continue, the invasion of Europe, the first day, one day, 4,411 military personnel lost their lives. And I say military because the Germans up on the cliffs were hitting Navy ships, bringing soldiers over, and the ships would sink and take both Navy sailors and soldiers down. So anyway, so military personnel, 4,411 in one day. So you can see why I sure did not want to be a foot soldier. But so anyway, when I got into the Air Corps, eventually I ended up in the Troop Carrier Command. Troop Carrier Command had two missions. One mission was to fly troops to wherever they might be needed around the world suddenly. The other mission was to train those hundreds and hundreds of thousands of glider pilots needed. So a glider in those days was nothing but wood and fabric, and it was designed for one trip across the English Channel, or one trip for the invasion of Japan. So I was assigned then to the glider training. We had to train glider pilots around. So eventually then, when the invasion of Europe with the hundreds of thousands of these gliders, when they would land behind the Germans in France, and most of them would just crash land, and that's why they were designed just for wood and fabric. But when the invasion was successful, we started training glider pilots then for the invasion of Japan. Well, the invasion of Japan changed very dramatically, as you may know from history. The 2 atomic bombs that were dropped on Japan stopped any training of glider pilots. The war ended, so they were no longer needed. So you can see then how important it was a sad situation naturally with the drop of 2 atomic bombs, but you can see how the invasion of Japan would have been a lot more than 4,411 in one day. So you can see how important. So after the war ended, we were discharged. During the war, each military person got points. You got a point for doing this and a point for doing that. If you were married, you got a point. At the end of the war, the military person with the highest number of points got discharged first. The war ended in August of 1945. My number did not come down until February of 46. And I got my discharge then. During the war, I got interested in electronics. And at the end of the war, veterans were given free tuition for college. I decided I was going to go somewhere to study electronics. And I found the New York Technical Institute that was offering an electronics course. So I got that. When I finished the New York Technical Institute, I got a job right here at BW Airport with Westinghouse. And I started there in 1952. And I was assigned to a new radar system that was being developed for a new Navy plane at Douglas Aircraft in California. And by 1957, the production was ready to start and ship radar to Douglas Aircraft in California. And here's where Mr. Hershey comes in. I was asked if I would go to California for 5 weeks and teach Douglas Aircraft personnel how to test the radar. Because when they sold their airplane to a Navy inspector, they had to make sure all the systems in the airplane were working, including the radar. So I said, yes, I would go. So I was out there for 5 weeks. When I came back, incidentally, an airplane, when it was sold to a Navy inspector, the airplane was flown to the Jacksonville Naval Air Station in Florida. When I got back into the plant after my 5 weeks, my top manager said, will you now go to Florida for 5 weeks and teach Navy personnel how to test the radar? I said, yes, I would. Well, 5 more weeks, my daughter and my son here, I took my family with me. My son was 9 months old at the time. So we spent 5 weeks in Florida. On weekends, we became Florida tourists, all at Westinghouse expense. Well, when I was in Florida, Westinghouse opened up a new plant, not a few miles from the one at BWI. And instead of radar, the new plant was to manufacture torpedoes for the U.S. Navy. So when I got back from Florida, in the meantime, my top manager who asked me to go to Florida, he was transferred to the new plant. When I got back, he asked me if I would transfer to the new plant with him. Why me? But he did. Anyway, I took the job. I told him I definitely would transfer. So in the job, I got assigned to management. And when I moved up to middle management, one department I inherited was the inspection department. And I knew nothing about inspection. So I thought, being the manager of the department, I better find out what inspection is all about. So what I did, I found the American Society for Quality that had an inspection division. So I joined the society and joined the division. I started to attend the meetings of the inspection department, inspection division, and I would go to meetings and I would do different tasks for the inspection division. And after a number of years being in the division, one day I got a notice that I was elected chairman of the inspection division. Oh, so that job I knew takes 100% of your time, and it's a 2-year assignment. I asked my top manager, he said, take the assignment. So now I was doing work for the inspection division, but still a Westinghouse employee. I got all the Westinghouse benefits. I got everything. I was free to travel anywhere in the United States I wanted for the inspection division activities. And if all I had to do was, if I wanted to go to a meeting in San Francisco, all I had to do was ask the top manager's secretary for a ticket to San Francisco. No questions asked, how long, or anything like that. Why do you have to go? All I had to do was ask for the ticket. So after 2 years on that assignment, I finally had to start doing some Westinghouse work. Well, the society has a technical conference every year in a different city around the United States. And there has to be a technical program planned for that conference. Well, for the 1982 conference in Detroit, the society asked Westinghouse for an employee, to borrow an employee for 2 years. My top manager, a different one now, asked me to take the assignment. But again, I questioned, why me, when there are many other employees who were also members of the society? So I took the assignment, and the conference runs from Mondays through Wednesdays in that city. The conference and the technical program I planned went very well, very well. And it was a success. After those 2 years, I had to start Westinghouse work again. Now it was 4 years with no Westinghouse work, but being paid by Westinghouse. So I started working Westinghouse again. Lo and behold, for the 1985 conference that would be here in Baltimore, the society asked Westinghouse to borrow another employee. Now my third top manager asked me if I would take the assignment. I said yes. So now I'm in the years 5 and 6 of doing society work and no Westinghouse work, but yet an employee. But the question is, with those 3 top managers, all 3 of them, they probably didn't know each other, but they all asked me for special one-person assignments. But why did they select me? And I can tell you in my dear heart, it is what Mr. Hershey taught me, to be reliable and to be responsible. And it paid dividends until I retired finally in 1985. So I've been retired now longer than I worked. So I'm still collecting a Westinghouse pension. So at 104, I'm sure they did not consider an age this old when they planned their retirement program. But I'm still collecting every month a Westinghouse pension. So that is, then of course eventually I knew someday, I lived with my daughter for a number of years after my wife died. My wife and I were married for 72 years. 72 years. And a lot of people say, well, what do you attest your longevity to? Well, I say, my wife and I were married for 72 years, minus the 3 years I was in the military. My wife and I were married for 72 years, and I ate her good cooking. Well, to be truthful, it must have helped, or I wouldn't be here this long. I wouldn't be 104, but her good cooking plus some other factors got me here. But eventually, I had a spell in the hospital in January this year, and I realized then that I would have to be moving to assisted living. And that's why I ended up here, and I'm here today with the dear sisters of the little poor who are taking very good care of me here. I can really say I benefited by moving here with the little sisters. One last thought, and I'll stop talking. When I was home, and I ended up in the hospital in early January, I didn't give too much thought to that. What caused me to be in the hospital was one morning when I was just sitting after I ate breakfast, my head started spinning, and I realized something was wrong. And my son here monitored me and eventually called 911. 911 decided to send two nurses evaluated me and decided to send me to the hospital. But that's when I realized then that I better be looking for assisted living. So now you know how I ended up here. And I'm going to stop talking. But I had to tell you enough about Mr. Hershey. Because without him, I have no idea where my life would have led me to. I could have ended up on the streets because there was no way my mother could keep me. She had no income. She lost his income. There was no Social Security. So I'm very fortunate that Mr. Hershey raised me. I'm very fortunate that I had contact with Mr. Hershey. Oh, I left one little story out about Mr. Hershey. I told you when we got to age 12, he put us on farms, 10 boys on the farm. The farm at the afternoon milking time, what he would do, he made sure that one boy went and put in hay for the cows. So when the cows came back from milking, they would have hay to eat. Well, Mr. Hershey would occasionally visit places unannounced. Nobody knew when he was coming. One day when it was unannounced, he showed up at the farm I was on. And we had two barns. Where the cows stayed overnight was a small one. We had to go into that small barn to put in the hay, and you're in there all by yourself. And I was in there one day after being assigned, and I was working the hay, and I felt a tap on my shoulder. And when I turned around, there was Mr. Hershey. Just the two of us, all by ourselves. And at age 13, when I was putting hay hay was hay. Mr. Hershey said, oh, when he had no children, he called us his children. He said to me, son, do you know what kind of hay you're feeding the cows? Well, at age 13, hay was hay. But I soon found out it was alfalfa. But I just wanted to tell you that little story to show you somebody in the big barn where all the other boys were must have told him there was one boy in that barn. Why would he have come in that barn if there was nothing there? So I'm sure he came to check on me, but it gave me the opportunity to answer his question about what kind of hay. So you can see, I wanted to add that just to show you again how Mr. Hershey, I have other stories I could tell you, but time is running out. Oh, I said one last story. Now, I'm going to tell you one last. Cut me off. Cut me off. I'm just going to show you the generosity of Mr. Hershey as far as caring for people in need. I mentioned the fact that the war started in Europe in 1939. In 1939, Hitler tried, 37, Hitler tried to get rid of the Jewish people in Germany. And what he did, he cut the Jewish people off from purchasing commodities. They could not purchase, for example, sugar. No sugar. That did not work for Hitler. A lot of the Jewish people did not leave. So in 1938, what he did, he decided to pay to have Jewish people move out of Germany. He wanted to get rid of the Jewish people. What he did, he would pay Jewish people to move, including ships that would take Jewish people to ports around the world. And some of those ships would come to New York Harbor. At the farm I was on, there were always two sets of house parents. So if a house parent take a weekend off, there was always other house parents to care for us. Anyway, one house parent decided to retire. So Mr. Hershey then had to hire another married couple to be our house parents. And when he heard about the ships coming into New York Harbor, he secretly and quietly, didn't tell anybody, but I knew about it because the farm, was my farm, that the reason he went to New York City. And what he did, he interviewed the Jewish people getting off the ship. And when he found a married couple that met his requirements, he hired that Jewish couple right on the spot and brought them to Hershey. They became our second house parents. And to show you then, one last bit, in our dining room on the farm, 20 boys, there were 5 boys at a table and 1 house parent. So there were 4 house parents, 1 at each table. And I guess the house parent was to teach us proper manners. And the next morning at breakfast, I was at the table where this Jewish house father sat. And I wish I had thought of the significance, which I didn't, but he was so happy that he could have sugar. And what he did, when we got our bowl of cereal, he put multiple spoons of sugar on his cereal. And I wish I had realized the significance of it, but I didn't at that age. But I didn't count the number of spoons, but I remember it was multiple. But the point I want to bring out is that Mr. Hershey had a caring heart for these suffering Jewish people, just like he had a heart for poor boys who in dire need of a home. That was a good last fact. So now I'm going to stop, as I said a half an hour ago.
Wonderful, man. Wonderful.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Max. Thank you. that'll do it, folks. So thank you all, and once again, many thanks to you, Ken. Decades of service. We truly appreciate it. So thank you, everybody.